Hey, you playa, are you struggling to figure out what you should text your crush that's going to start an interesting conversation and eventually lead them to liking you? Are you nervous that if you text the wrong thing, you're going to push them away and totally make them not like you at all? Well, I'm going to walk you through what you shouldn't say, things that you should avoid ever texting your crush if you want them to actually like you back. So don't do these things. Maintaining a text conversation with your crush is hard sometimes. If you message them too much, it's super annoying. If you don't message them enough, then you're not engaging them. You're not showing them that you like them. So what's that healthy balance and what should you avoid? Well, here are the 5 messages. Number 1, sending the simple word hey or any variation of it. How you doing? What's up? How's it going? How are things? With no context at all. Just simply saying those messages is not enough to make them interested. Granted, you are doing the right thing by messaging them first because you're evoking that curiosity. You started this conversation and they want to know what it's about. But where most people fail is that they just sit and wait. They wait for the other person to acknowledge their hey, to greet them back. And this is the biggest mistake that you could ever make. Imagine you open up your Instagram DMs and all you see are tons of messages from different people that say things like, hey, how's it going? What's up? And all those different variations. None of those messages are unique. None of them stand out. So all those guys just kind of get grouped into one singular bucket. And the other major problem with it is that if they do respond with a greeting and say, hey back, you're left back at square one. The conversation still has not gotten up off the ground. There's no substance to it. So you kind of just wasted that first shot in actually getting their attention. The second kind of text that you should never send your crush are what I consider conversation enders. These are words that kind of just put a cap on whatever it is you're talking about. That could be saying something like facts, cool, nice, and just leaving it at that. Similarly to the bland greetings that we mentioned before, you're closing off that conversation and not really adding much to it. When you're not adding to a conversation, you're actually hurting it. So you don't want to just kind of say something like, that's cool or awesome, and just leave it at that. You want to ask a follow-up question to learn more about that person. You want to go deeper into the things you already talked about to understand them on a whole new level. I'm going to link up a video over here on how to go deeper into those conversations, but stay away from these one-word replies and answers. Number 3 on the list is not one that everyone is guilty of, but you tend to do this more when you're super nervous, and that is totally word vomit and create a huge wall of text. There is nothing more intimidating in a DM than a wall of text. There's so many layers to it that you have to sit there and break down. First, you have to read this entire message. You have to kind of chunk it into pieces to know what you want to respond to, and you have to have the energy to actually respond to everything that's there, which leads most people to just ignore it outright. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to respond because it's a lot of effort on their part. Now, if you're someone that's guilty of sending these huge responses in the DMs, chances are you're oversharing and you're not giving that person an adequate chance to sit and break down what you're saying. So instead of giving every single detail of every story you want to share, give a little bit at a time. Share one thing and see what their response is. Break it down into smaller messages so it's easier for them to actually read. Telling a story through text is way different from telling a story in person. If you and I were sitting in a room, you might sit and listen to me talk for a few minutes straight. But imagine if those few minutes were transcribed into a text message. It would just be a lot of scrolling over and over. So texting should be bite-sized. It should be back and forth conversation. It should be 2 people adding input to the conversation. Mistake number 4 might sound a bit contradictory to what I said earlier about asking questions, but there is a point where asking questions becomes too much and you start to get into interview mode, and this is not a place you want to be in. Interview mode is basically you asking a question, getting an answer, moving on to a new question, getting an answer, moving on to a new question, getting an answer, and cycle repeats over and over. There's no substance, there's no detail, there's no depth to any of the questions that you're asking. People tend to do this when they get super nervous talking to someone and they don't want the conversation to end. They think that by asking lots of questions, they're going to keep that person engaged. But by giving this kind of robotic response where you're just asking question after question, it's going to feel repetitive. It's going to feel like you're just disconnected from them. They're not going to enjoy that conversation at all. Asking questions is a good thing. In fact, it's a great thing. You should be asking lots of questions because you really want to get to know them better. So instead of just asking questions over and over, go deeper into each of those questions. Hear what they have to say. Spend time really listening to what they're sharing and ask your questions related to that. And the fifth text message that will totally push your crush away and make them not want to talk to you at all is asking them this simple question: why are you ignoring me? Don't get me wrong, it's a straight and honest question. If you're messaging them over and over and they're just not responding, or you're getting left unread, you might be curious as to why they are ignoring you. But by saying that to them, you're putting them in a difficult position. Choice A, they're honest. They tell you flat out, look, I don't want to talk to you because I don't really like you, which might sting a little bit for you and make them look like the bad guy, so most people don't really take that route. Choice B, they lie about it. They tell you, oh, I didn't see your message earlier, or I did see it, but I forgot to respond. You know that's probably not true, especially if you're messaging them over and over, and especially if you're seeing all those read receipts coming through. Or choice C, which is probably the route that they're going to take, which is pure silence. They don't respond, they don't acknowledge it, they pretend like it never existed. Instead of asking them that straight up awkward question, why are you ignoring me? Or even worse, why did you block me? Try a different route to communicate with them. Maybe that's in person, maybe that's in a group, maybe that's in a group text message, some other way to talk to them that's not asking that cringy question. And perhaps the thread that ties all of these bad text messages together is this: when you DM your crush, you want those conversations to be exciting, enjoyable, and engaging. And each of these messages do the opposite. They create a disharmony, they create space, they end conversations, and they don't go any deeper into helping the two of you get to know each other better. So avoid each of these types of messages and focus on the important things, sharing your personal stories so they can learn more about who you are as a person, because you're pretty awesome. You have a lot to give to a conversation. Don't mess it up by kind of falling into the traps that these messages lay out for you. Now, if you want to know what you should say in your text conversations, or even how to navigate them so that they're super smooth all the way through, click on the playlist on the screen there. I'm going to share tons of different tips that's going to help you have easy, fun, and engaging conversations with someone that you like. Check those videos out, and I'll catch you next time. As always, love and peace.